Do you feel like your hands are too small and it's physically impossible to stretch them to reach more frets? Well, this is how I felt in the beginning. It's something I get a lot of comments about, and over the last 20 years, I've seen hundreds of my students struggle with this too. So I'm gonna show you how you can instantly double your reach with just a few simple tweaks. It's actually pretty easy, and you'll be able to reach more frets by the end of this video. First, I'm gonna give you two examples, and I wanna see if you can guess what the difference is, because this is the most common mistake I see. In example one, notice how my thumb is too high, which severely limits finger stretch. I literally can't reach past 3 frets when my thumb is that high. But when I lower my thumb to this part of the neck, I can easily reach 6 frets. All right, so where should you position your thumb on the neck? Imagine an invisible line that's exactly center on the back of your neck, or maybe you have an actual line like I do on this telly. But depending on what you're doing, you generally want to try to aim for right on that line, because if you're up here, it's just going to be hard to get a good stretch. Now, depending on what I'm doing, sometimes I do play with my thumb up here, but if I'm really trying to get that stretch, I need to keep my thumb down here. Now, I want to talk in a little more detail about your left hand position, because this is extremely important and it can be the root cause of a lot of issues you have in general. Sometimes there can be exception to these rules, but these especially apply when you're playing stuff like scales, patterns, and single note melody solo type stuff. So another thing to mention about your thumb placement is your thumb should be vertical and not off to the side. And it should be behind the second finger. So if you're at the first fret with your first finger and the second fret with your second finger, your thumb would be behind the second finger. Now, sometimes it'll be a little more over here towards the first finger, but generally behind the second finger is what you should aim for. So what if this is causing you physical pain? Well, we definitely don't want that. So if your wrist is hurting, there's a few other small tweaks we can make to help that. But let me give you another way to think about this concept first. So another thing to keep in mind is, instead of coming at the guitar from a horizontal angle like this, think about coming at it from a slightly more diagonal or vertical angle. Just don't go too extreme here, because if you roll your wrist too far forward and put too much pressure on that part of your wrist, it's really bad. So don't overdo it. It's very subtle. You want to keep your wrist pretty straight and just slightly arched, with your fingers naturally curved and on their fingertips. Sometimes moving your whole hand a little forward will bring you onto your fingertips, but just, again, make sure you're not overextending your wrist like this. So this hand's palm and knuckles should be parallel with the strings. Now, there are some exceptions, but in general, that's what you should be aiming for. You also want to make sure that you have some space between this part of your hand and the neck of the guitar. So in general, that's how you should be thinking about your thumb and hand position. But that's not all. There's a couple other tweaks you can make that will really make a difference. Now, if your goal is looking cool while playing guitar, you're probably not gonna like this tip, but it's really helped me. If you're standing up and you have your guitar super low, it's pretty hard to get a nice stretch. So if you don't mind looking like a nerd, try playing with your guitar up higher. So if I'm standing, I like to have my guitar about the same height that it is when I'm sitting down, because that just feels the most comfortable for me. That's what I'm used to, because I tend to practice guitar sitting down, and it helps me get a better stretch. Also, when you're sitting down, you can use a stool to prop your leg up, or even just prop your foot on something to get your leg a little higher. But just by adjusting the position of your guitar a little higher, it can help you get more stretch. So what's an exercise you can practice to work on being able to stretch your fingers more? I do have some exercises, but let me cover this last tweak first. Now, at risk of looking like an even bigger dork than playing with our guitar up high, let's look at how classical guitar players hold their guitar for a second. They hold the guitar on this leg, and they have the neck of the guitar angled slightly up to where the headstock is like almost even with your head. Now, that's always felt a little awkward for me, but if you try it, it actually does help you get a nice stretch in your fingers, and it also feels like your hand is in a much more natural position. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't usually do this, but sometimes I do adjust the angle of my neck a little bit, which can really help you get more stretch. One more thing to mention on the neck position is you can try bringing the neck closer to you, because if it's too far out this way, it's gonna make it harder. But these simple tweaks to the position of your neck should help you get a better stretch. And remember how I mentioned earlier about not not putting too much pressure on this part of your wrist to the point where it's causing pain? Well, the reason that usually happens is because you're going too far with the thumb down, or you're just rolling your wrist too far forward. So before we get to the exercise, let's just recap. Pull your thumb down, think about coming at it from a slightly more diagonal or vertical angle. Just make sure you don't go overboard with this and crank your wrist out too far forward. Bring your guitar up a little higher and sit classical style, or just angle your neck up slightly. So for an exercise to practice, there's a ton you can do. You can do a simple spider exercise where you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on every string, or you can do scales, patterns, etc. But this is how you should practice it. So let's just use the spider pattern for this example. Start it up pretty high on the neck to where it's easy, and I want you to just press down all 4 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, go slowly down 1 fret at a time, and wait until you get to the spot where it starts to become a little bit of a challenge for you to reach the highest note with your pinky. Now, first, you want to make sure you're making the tweaks we talked about. So bring your thumb down, make sure your guitar isn't too low, and maybe try angling the neck up a little bit. So if this is a spot where you can kind of get to that 4th note, but it's a little bit of a stretch, this is probably a good place to start. Play it there over and over for a few days or a week, and you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and do it as slow as you need to, but all the way up and down the neck. 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way back down. Play it there for a few days or a week, and then the next week, try it 1 fret lower and do it for a week starting there. And then the week after that, try it 1 fret lower, and just keep going down and down until you get all the way down to the 1st fret. Now, it might take you more or less time than that, but you get the idea. It's just like working out. Now, I'm no expert on strength training, although I'm sure that's quite surprising to you because of my stunning physique. But you just want to push yourself a little more until you build those muscles up. You just haven't really developed the muscles in your fingers to be able to stretch like that. And it's totally normal. It's just gonna take some time. Now, if you need some other exercises to practice this with, check out this video where I go over the top 5 exercises for beginner guitar players, and there's a few good ones in there that you can use. But I hope this video helped, and I'll see you soon. Peace.